Barrie.
Hi, everyone. This is Barrie Friedland, and of course, I'm with Jacob Kravetz for our DSOT friendly chat with people we admire making changes in our communities. Today, we have Paula Hendry, who is a retired teacher, but has not retired from helping children and students. So she has a very interesting story, and we're welcome and please tell us what you're doing.
Okay, so when I was actually an active teacher, I had a program we called the Book Cycle, and we went around in the summer to the neighborhood around my school, which was a low-income neighborhood, and every Friday gave out 2 books to whoever came at these like 5 or 6 or 10 different stops. So we gave out about 100 books every Friday, and then which was great because the idea is that why do people in low socioeconomic groups not do well in school? Because 2 reasons: they start behind. So when they enter kindergarten, they could be 2 years behind, which is catastrophic. And secondly, they lose academic skills over the summer because they often don't have anything stimulating or academically useful going on in the summer. So that was what the book program was about. So I really just started enjoying giving books to kids because my feeling is that people will enjoy reading if you connect them to books that they will enjoy, or even Sports Illustrated or magazines or whatever. I mean, they can read about
That was
Pokemon.
actually one of the first ways. Sports Illustrated for kids was back in like 2nd or 3rd grade. I feel like one of the first things that I started reading very regularly, sort of on my own, for fun. I really admire everything that you've done because I agree so much about how important reading is. I have been affected for a long time and wanted, my own library ever since seeing Beauty and the Beast,
Wow.
actually, back when I was a little kid, and just seeing those, the shelves of books. And I have lots of memories of my parents, I have siblings too, but they would alternate, switching off between who would read to us at night and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
So it's a really, really valuable experience growing up, and really opens your world.
Because I think we can tell kids reading is important. You have to learn how to read, or else, you're not going to have many options in your future, which is all true. But kids are kids and people are people. And there's no need to do that. I don't think we can help kids find, and this is what librarians do with all kinds of aged people, is help people find things that they would want to read. And it could be on a
Hmm.
computer or on a device or however, but just to help people connect with stuff that's going to be their choice of how they spend their time. So that was that. So then when I when I was near retirement, I heard about this program, which was already on the Eastern Shore, where people were connecting with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library in Tennessee and starting up local programs. So for a year, I just said, oh, well, we don't do that. Well, that doesn't exist where I am. And the second year I met this person, she said, well, you should start it. So I checked it out. And so what it is Dolly Parton, this is her main charitable initiative, and she really does a lot of other stuff too,
She's
because her
really
father, who, as much as Dolly Parton is such a genius, her father must have also been very smart, and he didn't learn how to read. So here he's trying to raise like 6 or 8 kids without reading. So she started this in 95 to honor her father, and the idea is to send books, high quality books, by mail to children every month from the time they're
good.
born until basically until they turn 5, when it's assumed that they're going to be starting kindergarten. So that's what it
That
looks
is
like on a
amazing.
national level. Yeah. So she sends out 3 million books every month, her organization. And they're in like 5 different countries, different English speaking countries.
Mm.
So it's amazing. And so they sort of take care of the main administrative things that need to be on a large scale. So they have a committee that selects the books, and they actually get the books printed, and they maintain the database of the children's names and stuff. And because they distribute so many books, it's really cheap. So for about $2.60, including the mailing, we can send a book to children every month, which is incredible because the books would cost
Nice.
$7, $8, $9.
Yeah.
Wonderful books. So on a local level, we find kids, register children that are from birth to age 5, and we raise money. So two things. And one of them is really fun and one of them is really hard. And I'll let you guess which is which, registering kids or finding money. So
Are you saying as a teacher that your great love isn't trying to find money from people?
uh, yeah, no, well, it's interesting. I mean, it's a whole other world, and it's a whole other set of skills and it's a whole
Mhm.
other lot of information that you have to learn and a lot of writing. And I mean, it's fun in itself, and it's encouraging when you're successful, but it's sort of never ending. So as far as nonprofits go, it's very money or hungry. You know what I mean? It's not just like
Mhm.
getting 10 volunteers together every month to clean a lot, which is a wonderful thing. But once you bought your tools, you just have to gather your people. This is like stuff and
Right.
all the time. Yeah. But you know, it's great. It's great.
Is how many, so you were saying overall this program does 3 million across the country and in various other English speaking
Every
countries
month.
around the world every month. Yeah, three
Yeah.
million every month. How on the Eastern Shore, the organization or the offshoot franchise subsidiary, whatever the name is,
Uh-huh.
in
Affiliate.
the area, how many kids are getting books?
So
Are you servicing sort of each month?
okay, so I'm in the Anne Arundel County area, and
Okay.
we serve right now we're like almost 3,700, but we sort of go between 3,500 and 3,800 a month. And we started with 60 in 2019 at the very December 2019. So we've given out over 105,000 books. And in the state of Maryland, the whole Eastern Shore has affiliates, and Prince George's County has it for every kid in the county. But there's a lot of places, like for example, and also the state supports this program in Baltimore City. And then in other counties, it's sort of some have it, some don't. But Baltimore County does not have this program at all. There's zero. No children are receiving Dolly Parton books in Baltimore County, which is very shocking to me
You
because
know,
it's a lot of kids and it's a lot of need there.
Paula, we have allies throughout, not only throughout the country, through various states, but in Canada and in Europe. So what you're saying is a warning, it's an omen for people listening outside of Maryland to double check in their areas to make sure that their cities and counties are with this program.
Right. But somebody has to take the responsibility to start it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I think Prince George's County is they're very lucky. I think that their county budgets funds for it, and they might pay all of it themselves or most of it themselves. In
Right.
Washington, D.C. and in Delaware, when kids are born, they're automatically registered. In Washington, D.C., I think half of the money comes from the local government, and the other half the United Way raises. And so there's something like 30 states throughout the country that have statewide programs, but it just means that the state is supportive, and the usual model is that the state might pay half.
Mm.
So it isn't like we can just say, well, my county should have it. Somebody has to
Mhm.
specifically take the initiative. And I mean, you certainly could have Baltimore County be like Prince George's and say, okay, we're gonna, budget $500,000 a year, and we're gonna open it up for the whole county and pay for everything. But that's kind of unusual.
Gotcha.
You
Are
actually
there how many? So you said you have 3,700 currently kids in the Anne Arundel County area being served. What is that in terms of scale versus the number of sort of children in the region? Do
Oh,
you
that's
have
a
any
really
sort
good
of sense?
question. That's a good question. There are, I mean, I could sort of go in my file, but wait for me to do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
It's probably about 50 to 70,000 kids that we could serve. So what we have chosen to do in Anne Arundel County, because we have to raise money, is we've chosen to focus on areas of the county where there are a lot of low income people, people living in low income or public housing, and areas where there's lots of immigrants who are learning English. And the third thing is there are areas where the reading scores are low. So we're not affecting the kids that are in school, but we're trying to affect their younger siblings and their community so that when they
Mhm.
enter kindergarten, they will be better ready to read. So we have those three sort of ideas. I mean, we also serve all the military families, active duty military,
Mhm.
as you know, and people that have disabled children automatically. But anyway, we focus on low income, low reading performance areas of people that don't have English language skills. So, because we have to go out and raise money, and that's, of course, very competitive. And of course, there are people out there raising money for very, very basic needs like housing and food. So we have to make
Mhm.
the case that this is an important function. So if I tell people, so I can say at least 80% of the children that are registered with us are one of those things. As I said, low
Mhm.
income, English language learning, have live in a community where the reading scores are low, or are military, whatever. Mostly those the three criteria.
Mhm.
And I can say it's 80% or more meet those criteria. So this is really where you want to spend money. There was a federal study a few years ago that said that 60 among low income families, 61% have no books at home. So in
That's a
low
lot.
income families, if you can picture this, kids arriving at school never having enjoyed a book or rarely having enjoyed a book.
Well,
And
I want to circle back to something that you said earlier when I said that, our email and our podcast reaches a lot of people. I don't want to dismiss how hard this is and the commitment. I'm just saying, hey, folks, if you're looking for something to do and it's not in your area,
yeah,
here's a one thing here's a way to step up. Jacob and I were talking. We are being failed by so many quote unquote leaders and institutions right now that we need people standing up like you and others standing up and saying, well, there's this issue and this is what I'm going to do to ameliorate it and to make and to help the kids.
yeah. Thank you. You're right. You're right. That's a great idea. And I was really so there's so the way it works is that kids you set out either a zip code or a school attendance area. So, for
Mhm.
example, in zip code, whatever, in the several zip codes, if you live in that
Mhm.
zip code, you can register for my program. And you could be wealthy, you could be poor. You don't have to come and show me any documentation. Just this is where my address, boom, you're into it. Then in some zip codes, and this is a little more, a lot of people don't do this, but we do this. In certain zip codes, there's wealthy people and poor people. For example, in Annapolis. So in Annapolis, we just serve everybody in the two Annapolis zip codes, but they're people with $1 million houses on the water whose kids have
Mhm.
200-300 books. I can't raise money for them. I can't make a case to raise money for them. So our second method of delineating who's qualified or eligible is by school attendance zone. So if you live in the area where you will attend this school, we will serve
Mhm.
you. So it's interesting. We just had a sort of a state, meeting online, and in Frederick County, they have three school districts, only three, and you
Mhm.
have to live in an area where you're going to go to one of those three schools. That's a brilliant idea. So you can, and then actually, there's one place in Montgomery County where the community said, we want our school to get served. We want the children that will be going to our school to get served. I think it's Wheaton Woods or something. So any child who lives in the Wheaton Woods attendance area can have these books sent to them. And that organization only takes care of that group. And so it doesn't really, like, you don't have to go overboard like I did
Mhm.
and make a huge commitment. You could just say we're going to serve this one school or these one or two
Mhm.
schools, and you pick the schools that have the greatest need. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but it can have a big impact.
If people are interested, in after having watched this, they're feeling inspired and they find, what do you think are the sort of you've sort of alluded to some of the steps around doing this, but what have you found are sort of the are people, you know, do they acquiesce to this? Are they happy to see these programs start up? Do you find a lot of skepticism around trying to raise the money? You know, like is there big pushback? I'm just sort of wondering, just like in the community sense, for instance, in Anne Arundel County, do you mostly find that people are think that this is a great use of the money and are very happy to do it, or is it a big uphill fight to sort of win the argument around books for kids? Um,
Well,
and what do you
I mean,
find is the main
it's always a
opposition?
fight when you're asking people to give you money, don't you think?
Mhm,
So it really depends. So among the community that's receiving the books, they are
mhm,
very happy to receive them. People are like, "Oh, God bless you for this." I can tell you lots of parent reactions, and if you're interested, I'm happy to do that. So the parents are very happy to get the books. Even parents that are not financially challenged are very happy to get the books. And then among people that I talk to, there's some people that seem to get it right away, like, "Wow, that's brilliant. That's great. I want to support you." And then other people are like, "So you send a kid a book. So what?" So it runs the gamut. It just depends on what people's relationship is to books and kids. And then it also
mhm,
depends on, I mean, I think there's a whole large group that can be educated to understand how important it is. It
mhm,
just might be something they haven't really thought about, but there's sort of a whole logic that I have finally constructed after 5 years of why it's important. So I'm trying to push that logic, you know?
I can't even imagine my life without books, without, they've been in my life my whole, they've always been there. I've always read. My mother thought that it hurt your eyes, so she restricted me at some point to like 10 books a week or something, reading 10 books a week. And when I was in fourth grade, I was reading Grapes of Wrath. And I was in my bedroom, and my father knocked on the door to say dinner was ready. And I remember this to this day. It was like I was in a movie, and I was picked up from Oklahoma. I was picked out of the Dust Bowl,
Right, right.
transported back to Lakewood, New Jersey.
mhm,
And it was such, I mean, books, I just can't even imagine a life without books, with, that they're just so important, not only for your own edification, but just learning about the world.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's a whole thing. Like there's so somebody said to me, "Well, how are you getting kids to read books instead of looking at their screens?" And I that's a great thing to do. My basic objective is that kids should know how to read. And they may
so
choose
this
to
is
read on screens. They might choose books in the future. They might just be able to read to, do their jobs. But to me, that's the fundamental thing. And of
mhm,
course, when I was a school, this is just my personal experience. When I was a school librarian, I really wanted kids to be able to connect with books and enjoy reading. But at this point, it's just so critical for these kids who are growing up in low income families without books that they can just be successful in school and get the basic reading skills that they need to be successful and graduate high school and begin a job where they can support themselves. So I totally agree with you. And there's lots of research on how reading develops your empathy for other people and it develops your understanding of your own emotional life, because you get into other people's heads,
mhm,
all kinds of things like that. Stress relief. I'm sure I agree with you, and I have the same. Well, you can see. I mean, books are like
mhm.
great, right? It's right behind me, but I just had my honest feeling. I hope that's the end result for lots of kids. But fundamentally, that's important, but it's also the first thing is that they just learn how to read successfully.
I,
The Maryland has in the state constitution actually has a requirement that every student in every citizen of the state be given like a full education, and be fully fully educated. Something which the state has commissioned studies on, and their own studies have found that they have been systemically failing at that. It's always unclear to me how you can have your own body be known violating your constitutional obligations and have nothing change. But have you, it's a thing, have you found any traction around, like, from the state or local governments that they, around that this is not like you need to teach kids that this is a cheap and cost effective way to help aid in reading, and thus it's sort of, is part of the state's responsibility around funding?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're really working on that. So about, as I said, there's some states where there's really a lot of support. So in Maryland, it was just about 3 years ago that they passed a bill, and we do get some support. So it was always supported, I believe, in Baltimore City 100%, but we get some funding every year. So my budget is around 100,000, from about 90 to 110, 120,000. And last year so recently I got 15,000 from the state. So it ends up being somewhere around 10 to 15% for me. I think it depends on how many kids in poverty that you serve. So the state of Maryland has kind of woken up to the fact that they need to support this. But of course, we're in a fiscal crisis, so it makes it a little harder. I heard that they might be giving us more support next year. And then on a local level, in Anne Arundel County, we have a wonderful county executive, and so we've been making the argument. And as I said, I think I'm getting better at, you know, making the connections, the logical connections, where this is really, really important. So one important thing is the county school system spends $20,000 a year per pupil. So and kindergarten, of course, is required. So over a 13-year period, they're spending, what is that, $260,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to provide books for kids in this program, it's $152 if the child is enrolled at birth and goes to age 5. So it's such a
Which is
small
nothing.
investment per child. When as soon as they turn 5, they're going to start spending 20,000. It's such a small investment. And then when you compare it to how much they spend on remedial education and helping kids who are behind in reading, and in fact, kids who fall behind generally don't catch up. So you can spend all
Mm.
this energy, all this money, all this time trying to get kids in second, third, fourth, and fifth grade reading help. And it's probably, if they're lucky, it'll move the needle a little bit. So what we really want to do is prevent that kind of reading failure, because it has so
Mhm.
many implications. So one of the things, if kids don't learn how to read, they tend to. So anyway, so there's a whole lot of specific research on kids who are
Mhm.
not reading on grade level in grade 3. And the Annie E. Casey Foundation put this all together in the early 2000s. And it was really like this, this is the key time for a lot of reasons, partly because in grade 3, you're going from learning how to read to transitioning to learning school
From reading.
information from reading. You have to be able to read the math problems and learn the social studies and all that kind of stuff. So there's that shift. And so they know kids who were not reading grade level in 3rd grade are more likely to not graduate high school on time or at all. They're more likely to use drugs. Not to say they're all going to use drugs, but they're more likely to use drugs. They're more likely to go to jail. Girls are 2.5 times more likely to get pregnant. Not to say they're all going to do that, but the probability is greater for that group of kids. And another
Increases risk. Yeah.
increased risk. Thank you. Thank you. It's a good phrase. And then the other thing is they're also likely to be behavioral problems
Mhm.
because they can't function in school. They look stupid. They feel stupid. They're not shining because they can't do the work. And so they get frustrated. They misbehave for attention to get attention, but they also misbehave just because they're really bored and they don't feel part of what's going on. So it's just so important. I mean, this is kids' job as right, as 5, 6, 8 years old, to go to school and do well in school. But if they can't read, they're starting their life feeling like a failure, and then what does that mean in terms of their attitude towards society, themselves and society? So the whole point of what we're doing is let's prevent that kind of reading failure so kids can be successful. And I think sometimes the assumption is that kids from low income families or from dangerous neighborhoods, well, they just can't be successful. But that's, we know, not true.
Totally. I'm wondering as well as I'm listening to this, because we've talked with, just around how important reading is. We've talked with a bunch people, including other librarians, that are just talking around sort of the assault on libraries that has simultaneously been happening sort of across the country, and sort of the access to free reading, or the ability to, get access to books and this sort of information without, having to spend money or do, these barriers that are put up that sort of systemically make it more difficult to
And like
practice
censorship.
and enjoy reading. Yeah.
Mhm.
Via financial censorship or political censorship, or a variety of reasons. Have you, how, to your mind, or how do libraries fit into this this sort of crisis in reading, and the ability to sort of help children, and be part of an intervention towards fostering reading and a love of reading, and the ability to read in everyone?
Well, I was a teacher for a long time. In the first part of my career, I was a science teacher, and then I was a school librarian. I might have mentioned that. So library, I love libraries. Libraries are great, and it's really very impressive to me how public librarians have reinvented their mission. Because once we
Hmm.
started getting digital books, there was a lot of prediction that libraries were just going to go away. Everybody would just get their books on their devices, but they've done a great job in making libraries very welcoming and offering so many different services, maker spaces and free computer time and help on the computer and all, they have diaper pantries, all kinds of things in the library, help with your taxes. You probably know all this, but it's just wonderful. And they offer, so I'm in Anne Arundel County. We have a really wonderful library system. Of course, Pratt is great, but I'm not familiar on a day-to-day basis with what they're doing. But
Hmm.
so they do wonderful stuff with children. They have great children's programming, movement, and they have programming for Spanish speaking kids, and they have music and art kinds of
Hmm.
things, occasionally. But the thing is, so they offer all of these things, but
Hmm.
people have to go and out of their homes and take advantage of it. So
Hmm.
there are all kinds of barriers. In so we started a, a couple of years ago, another friend and I, she wanted to support me in this, and she's part of the Latino community in Annapolis. She said, "Well, we got to get kids to the library." So I'm like, "Well, let's try that." So we had like a every month, or I guess 3 weeks a month, we had a program in Spanish at the library in the evening, because the daytime programs were pretty much for people who didn't work or had a nanny. So let's do this at
Hmm.
6 or 7 in the evening, and we had like 13 people, and then 7 people, and then 2 or 1. So it just didn't take, even though we did lots of promotion. So people work very hard, or they have many kids, or they're cooking, or they don't have transportation. So those are some barriers that exist to the library. And then there's sort of a cultural thing where if they didn't grow up going to the library, or the library in their neighborhood is not perceived as welcoming, or they just never been there, they're just not going to go. So,
Hmm.
not to say that anybody has put up those barriers, but it's just historically, if it's not part of your habit,
Yeah.
and it's hard to do. So,
Hmm.
so one of the things I like about this program is it goes directly into your home, number one. And I love, love libraries. It's just something different, a different approach.
Yeah.
So it goes
Totally.
into your home and you get to keep it. So
Oh,
you're developing your own home library. So we definitely need both, you
oh,
know?
I I bought my house because I'm catty corner to a library, but of course I grew up with libraries. But children and a lot of library are doing away with fines, but there used to be penalties. If you didn't return the book on time, kids need books that they can write their name in, they can keep forever. I have a poetry book from when I was 8 years old, that I still have, and
Hmm.
Wow.
and nothing. I mean, we've talked to a lot of librarians, a lot of people advocating for this, and I am a marketer and a strategist, and I always say the best story wins. And unfortunately, people are falling for stupid stories. You know, they're falling for, oh, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, or, you know, all these people are committing crimes. And by reading stories and developing sort of critical thinking,
Yeah.
you can then parse through. My cat is joined us. You can parse through what's being flung at you,
Right.
and not just political, but advertisement. You know, you take this and you buy this and this will happen, or you know, and it
Right.
more stories that you explore, you know, the better you are at discerning, you know, what is true and what isn't true. I just,
Right. Yeah. And there's also a difference if you're reading, you're going to get so many more ideas. If you're watching television, it's very simplified. So you're going to get
Mm-hmm.
so much more depth of knowledge if you're reading to get your news. I mean, that's actually one of the things that started me, like just really what you're saying in the first place as a librarian, and then subsequently to this program, is if people don't learn how to read, it's almost hopeless for them to be able to learn how to think independently. It's just very unlikely. I mean, it certainly can happen, but you know, your sources of information are really important, and being able to tap many different sources of information is what is gonna sort of save us, you know?
you know,
Mm-hmm.
Jacob is a wonderful artist. But I always say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'll take 1,000 words. And when I was in college, I was a lifeguard, and which is not very stimulating. So I read the dictionary that summer, and my family made fun of me. They said, "Is it a good plot? Is it a cliffhanger?" But I just love words and I love stories. And, you know, as I said, we need to make this available. And I mean, even if it's not pleasurable, Paula, I think you really set the table on how critical reading is to every aspect of your scholastic life, as well as every aspect of your life.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it has been transformative for me, and it's just so inspiring um, to see you having fostered that as in a professional capacity throughout your whole career, and then afterwards to have found, a new way to continue to inspire, children to read and to empower them to be full
Right,
citizens, to be full people in the society, and to be able to, make the choices and have, and have that ability to decide and
right,
be who they want to be fully, rather than be inundated constantly and manipulated by others, who if they don't have that sort of internal,
yeah.
ability themselves. So anyway, we have it's been such a great conversation, and we appreciate so much in
Yes,
what
it's
you
been
do.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it. So yeah, I just want to say, thank you so much for all the work that you've done, that you continue to do in terms of inspiring and helping kids have the opportunity to learn, read, and grow.
Can I just finish
Mhm.
out one idea? This is like
Totally.
taking me 5 years to flesh this out, sort of in a cause and effect way. So if you start with this fact that we know third grade reading is essential, and if kids aren't reading on third grade level, they're much more likely to have these negative outcomes. And then you back up to that. Well, so how can we affect third grade reading? So
Hmm.
there are kindergarten readiness assessments, and there's actually a test that is used by maybe 10 to 15 states, including Maryland, that they give to kids in the first couple weeks of kindergarten. And it has different
Hmm.
functions, got math, social skills, motor skills, but it has a literacy component. So that kids get a score as to how ready they are for kindergarten in all those areas, and
Hmm.
specifically literacy. So we
Yeah.
know that kindergarten readiness is really associated with third grade reading success. like you're about 2 to 4 times more likely to be reading well in third grade if you enter kindergarten ready. And as I said, we know there's some kids that are 2 years behind on arrival at school. Shocking, but it's real. So if you back up from that, if you participate, if you get early reading skills at home, you're going to be more kindergarten ready. And we have evidence from studies that children who participate in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and receive books do better on kindergarten readiness assessments. And the longer they're in Dolly Parton Imagination, the more months they participate, the bigger the difference is. So this is what I'm putting on my grant applications now is if you have kids in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, they're going to do better they're going to be more kindergarten ready as evidence on the kindergarten readiness assessment. And then subsequently, they're going to be much more likely to reading proficiently in third grade. So
it's fantastic, and it just, yeah, it really goes to reemphasize again just how important this is for, to create fully, realized people and citizens, and how important it is to have this intervention happen early in terms
right,
of cost effectiveness, in terms of outcomes, yeah, in just terms of giving kids the sense that they're not, starting behind from the very
right,
beginning,
right,
and helping them with that confidence as well.
right, right.
Yeah. So, Paula, thank you so much for coming. This is
Thank
a
you.
fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it. Um, we love as well that you've given some tips for how people, if they want to get involved and they want to, help start in their own community, because we always like to leave people with something that they can actively do to help make the world a better
Right,
place.
right.
Um, so yeah, thank you so much, Paula. Really appreciate you for your
Thank
time today
you.
and for everything that you do. And to the rest of you watching, thank you so much. And until next time, don't shop on Tuesday.